You know that feeling when too many things fall through the cracks? Monday.com was built for that gap. The AI work platform where people and agents work side by side to deliver more together. Create your first Monday agent today at Monday.com.
Hey listeners, this is Peter and welcome back to the History Shorts. Today's episode is brought to you by the Podcast Republic, your ultimate listening app. Discover and subscribe to thousands of podcasts from around the world. Download Podcast Republic today, available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Today on History Shorts. In 1414, a delegation from East African coast arrived at the court of the Yongle Emperor of China. They brought gifts, spices, ivory, and exotic animals, and one creature that stopped the entire imperial court in its tracks: a giraffe. The Chinese had never seen a giraffe. They had a name for one, however. In their mythology, the Quilin was a miraculous creature that appeared only when a sage of perfect virtue ruled the land. It had the body of a deer, the hooves of an ox, and a single horn. It was gentle. It ate no living thing. The African's giraffe was close enough. The emperor's court declared it the Quilin. Heaven was announcing its approval of the Ming dynasty. The giraffe had arrived in China because a Chinese fleet had arrived in Africa. A fleet of 317 ships, 28,000 men, led by a 7-foot Muslim eunuch admiral whose name almost nobody in the Western world has ever heard of. His name was Zheng He. And 87 years before Columbus sailed with 3 ships and 90 men, Zheng He was commanding the largest wooden naval fleet the world had ever seen. Our history brief today returns to some myth versus history, and whether the pilgrims really wore all black clothing and buckled shoes. A quick word from our sponsors.
Hey, I've got the campaign brief ready, built from last quarter's data and the competitive landscape.
Approved. Oh, agents, where would we be without you?
Somewhere with a lot more tabs open.
Create your first Monday agent in minutes at Monday.com.
This day in history. On August 4th, 1914, Great Britain declared war on Germany after the German invasion of Belgium, bringing the British Empire into the First World War and transforming a European conflict into a truly global one. On August 4th, 1964, the Gulf of Tonkin incident was reported off the coast of North Vietnam. Though the details remain disputed, the event prompted Congress to pass the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, dramatically expanding American involvement in the Vietnam War. Story of the day. The man history calls Zheng He was born Mahe around 1371 in the province of the southwestern China. His family was Muslim. His grandfather and father had both made the Hajj to Mecca, and the young Mahe grew up in a household that combined Islamic faith with the commercial networks of the Indian Ocean world. When Ming forces conquered the region, Mahe was captured. He was approximately 10 years old. He was castrated and placed in the household of the imperial family, a common fate for boys taken in by conquest, who became eunuchs serving the dynasty. What was not common was what he made of all of this. Mahe grew to extraordinary height by Chinese accounts, and distinguished himself in the military campaigns of the prince who would become the Yongle Emperor. When that prince seized the throne in 1402, he gave his trusted military eunuch a new name, Zheng He, and then he gave him a fleet. The scale of what the Yongle Emperor commissioned has to be stated directly because it is almost impossible to absorb. Zheng He's flagship, called a treasure ship, was reportedly around 400 feet in length. Christopher Columbus's Santa Maria was only 85 feet. The first voyage of 1405 comprised 317 ships and 27,800 men: soldiers, sailors, translators, doctors, astrologers, merchants, and diplomats. Columbus, 87 years later, sailed with three ships and approximately 90 men. The comparison is not meant to diminish Columbus here. It is simply meant to convey the scale of what China was doing and chose to eventually stop doing way before Columbus. The treasure fleets were not primarily military expeditions, though they were capable of overwhelming force when required. They were projections of imperial power through diplomacy, trade, and spectacle. The fleet arrived at a foreign port, and the message was simple: behold what China is, bring tribute, enter the Chinese world order. And it all worked. From Southeast Asia to India to the Persian Gulf of the Red Sea to the east coast of Africa, rulers sent delegations back to the Ming court, bearing tribute, seeking alliance, and occasionally, magnificently, bringing giraffes. Zheng He made 7 voyages between 1405 and 1433. He reached Malacca, Hormuz, Mogadishu, among others. He was not discovering these places. They were thriving, connected, commercially sophisticated ports in an Indian Ocean trading world that had operated for centuries without Chinese naval dominance. What he was doing was inserting China into that world as its preeminent power. In Ceylon, he intervened in a local secession dispute on behalf of a king willing to acknowledge Chinese suzerainty and brought a rival king back to China as a prisoner. In Malacca, he established a relationship that turned a minor trading post into a major regional power under Chinese protection. He was, in the modern vocabulary, projecting hard and soft power simultaneously, and he had the ships to make either form credible. The voyages were, by every measure available to us today, a success. Then the Yongle Emperor died, and the fleet died with him. The Ming court of the early 15th century was not a unified institution, it was a battlefield in itself. And the treasure fleet program was, among other things, a weapon in a factional war. The eunuchs, led by Zheng He, controlled the fleet. They were outsiders by definition, castrated men who could never found dynasties, who served the emperor personally and derived their power entirely from imperial favor. Their opponents were the Confucian scholar bureaucrats who staffed the traditional imperial administration. Men who resented eunuch influence, regarded the voyages as wasteful extravagance, and believed that China's proper relationship to the outside world was one of dignified distance, not maritime adventure. When the Yongle Emperor died in 1424, the bureaucrats began winning. The sixth voyage, underway at the time of the emperor's death, was recalled mid-journey. A moratorium on further voyages was declared. Zheng He managed one final expedition, the seventh, from 1430 to 1433. He died at sea on the return voyage, somewhere in the Indian Ocean. He was approximately 62. After that, the dismantling was deliberate. One official reportedly locked the naval records in a cabinet to block a planned eighth voyage. The great ships were not maintained. They simply rotted at the moorings. The records of the voyages, the navigational charts, the diplomatic correspondence, the accounts of foreign lands were systematically destroyed by officials who considered them a dangerous monument to eunuch excess. China turned inward. 52 years after Zheng He's death, a Portuguese fleet rounded the Cape of Good Hope and reached the Indian Ocean. 20 years after that, Columbus. The ocean that China had dominated for 3 decades was open for others. The world that followed, the world of European maritime expansion, colonial empire, and the particular shape of modernity that came from that expansion, was not inevitable. It was a choice. Or more precisely, it was the consequence of a choice that China had made in the 1430s in a cabinet meeting about whose faction controlled the court. Historians debate endlessly what a continued Chinese naval presence in the Indian Ocean would have meant for the future of world history. The debate cannot be settled. What can be said is that the choice was made, and the locked cabinet, the rotting ships, and the burned records tell us exactly who made it and why. The History Brief. So let's close your eyes and picture a pilgrim. They're probably dressed exactly the same: black hats, black coats, white collars, black dresses, and shiny shoes with large silver buckles. It's the image that's been printed on Thanksgiving decorations, elementary school bulletin boards, and greeting cards for generations. There's just one problem: it's almost entirely wrong. The real pilgrims dressed in far more color than most people realize. So let's start with the black clothing. Yes, obviously black existed, but it wasn't everyday wear. In the early 1600s, producing rich black fabric was expensive because it required high quality dyes. Black clothing was often reserved for formal occasions or for wealthier individuals. Most pilgrims wore practical clothing in a variety of colors: brown, gray, green, blue, russet, a reddish brown shade, even muted yellows and reds. So let's talk about these famous buckles as well. Surprisingly, the pilgrims probably did not wear them at all, at least not in 1620. Large decorative shoe buckles didn't become fashionable until later in the 17th century, several decades after the pilgrims landed at Plymouth. Instead, most shoes were fastened with a simple leather lace or a tie. The same goes for the famous buckled hats, another later fashion. So, where did this image come from? Ironically, from artists. During the 19th century, painters illustrating the pilgrims often dressed them according to what people thought 17th century Puritans should look like. One of the most influential artists was one artist named George Henry Boughton, whose paintings emphasized somber black clothing and neat buckled outfits. As Thanksgiving became a national holiday after the Civil War, those images spread through school books, magazines, advertisements, and holiday decorations. Eventually, the artwork became more familiar than the history. There's another misconception worth mentioning while we're at it. People often imagine the pilgrims as joyless individuals who rejected beauty and color. The reality is more nuanced. While they valued modesty and discouraged excessive luxury, they were not opposed to color clothing or attractive fabrics. They simply believed dress should reflect humility rather than extravagance. So, why does the myth persist? Well, that's simple. One recognizable costume makes it easy to identify a pilgrim instantly. Historical accuracy is a little more complicated. Earth tone wool isn't quite as memorable as black hats and giant buckles. So, what's the reality here? The pilgrims probably looked much more colorful and much more ordinary than the Thanksgiving decorations suggest. No uniform, no shiny buckled shoes, and certainly not an entire colony dressed like they were attending the same funeral. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today and helping make this little show such a mighty success. If you're enjoying this show and would like to help with its production, you can always donate a few dollars at buymeacoffee.com or become our Patreon member to enjoy these episodes ad-free. Both of those links can be found on our website at www.historyshortspodcast.com. I also want to remind you to check out our YouTube channel where we have different series and videos that are not part of this main feed. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you all again tomorrow.
Jardiance has a big story to tell. Discover Jardiance empagliflozin 10 or 25 milligram tablets. Visit Jardiance.com, call 1-888-968-6648, or talk to your doctor to see if Jardiance is right for you.
A little pill with a big story to tell.